In today's age of reboots, remakes, retellings, I always find it interesting looking back on certain franchises and seeing the life course of certain IPs and how they not only developed and shifted over time, but how they've dipped their toes into different forms of media and platforms. I think two of the most interesting franchises to look back on are the Terminator franchise and the Alien franchise. I think these are interesting for a few reasons. The first being that they almost feel like sibling franchises, both coming out at relatively similar times, the original Alien in 1979 and Terminator in 1984, how they persisted together for over 4 decades, which on a side note is fucking crazy to think about considering how good Alien 1 is, how they both started at such high points and have slowly been trying to recapture that acclaim, and how they seemingly just lurk in the background, resurfacing every few years with a new rendition, and people kind of just accept it as if it's no longer a surprise. Like, I didn't know there was a recent Terminator movie until like a year after they released it, and upon learning about it, I was like, yeah, I'm sure there was. Actually, I think the only surprise with that movie was that Arnie was still in it. That man is literally a machine. One that the franchise continues to use to churn out movies. I haven't seen it, so it could be good, but I equally haven't heard much about it, so I don't expect it to be that good. In this regard, I think Alien has done a better job at attempting to try to keep the franchise going in the long run. The recent releases, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, at least tried something new in regards to story, as well as using some pretty amazing cinematography, as some of the shots in those movies are absolutely breathtaking. And I think what's most important is that they capture that essence of Alien well enough to make it feel like it's within that same universe, even if the story is quite convoluted with the addition of the engineers and all that. And the Alien franchise isn't as tired and drawn out as some of the others, like Terminator, and as such, I think there's still a lot of life to be getting out of this franchise. I liked the more recent movies, Covenant was cool, and rewatching Aliens before writing this made me pumped for more Alien. So if they were to release a new Alien film, I'd be pretty keen. Do I think it'll be a similar level to the originals? No chance, but I love this IP and that retro sci-fi aesthetic, and where these movies may have been falling a little short, I feel like the games have been performing well above expectations. Now, I know there were Alien games before these modern ones, Alien vs Predators, Alien Colonial Marines, etc., but I never played those, so I can't really comment on them. But the more recent games I have played, and more importantly, enjoyed. Alien Isolation I think came as a bit of a surprise to everyone. An isolated horror survival game set on a spaceship in the Aliens universe where you're being hunted down by an alien, dodging synths and other crewmates out to kill you. That nemesis system constantly keeping you on edge, the sound design and atmosphere capturing that classic Alien era and zeitgeist with old computer tech and rough spaceship interiors. That game came as a surprise, not only by the style of the game, but also by how well it performed. Rightly so, as that game was genuinely great and was actually tense and scary. It built tension and atmosphere and fear as to what's lurking in the walls around you. Alien Fireteam Elite was the next thing to release, and like many others, I really enjoyed it. There was a bit of jank, sure, and it may have lacked some content in terms of enemy variety, but it was fun. It was a nice, linear, condensed co-op shooter that was perfect to play with friends. And where Alien Isolation captured the atmosphere and spirit of the original Alien film, Fireteam Elite captured the spirit of the second film, Aliens, that marine, grunt, more actiony vibe of the sequel. And although it was free on Game Pass for a time, it's rated quite well in Steam too, which says something to the success of the game, even if it didn't sell a whole lot of copies. And a few months back, the latest installment of the Alien video games was released, Aliens Dark Descent, and like the games before it, I think it's pretty solid. I mean, it's cliche in some aspects, mainly the story, which is relatively predictable, but they did try some new things in regards to the story that I don't think quite landed, but I appreciate the attempt. The genre of the game is cool, that tactical real-time action strategy game where you can't pause time, you can only slow it down to help make key decisions, almost like being a pseudo turn-based game. The game had some great atmosphere and map design, as well as an enjoyable combat system that requires you to make split decisions on the fly that keeps you engaged in nearly every combat encounter. All of that puts this game in the kind of solid 7 out of 10 category. It's a game, one that I think lacks a little ambition, but that alien setting and world that this game is set in is one that I've always enjoyed moving through and exploring, and I think that this game captures that atmosphere and the spirit of Alien really well. That fear of the dark, or fear what's around the next corner. That knowledge that something evil is lurking within the walls and can spring on you at any point. It is an Alien game, not just a game that has been shoehorned into the Alien universe. It is true to the source material, and I feel like if you go into it for the purpose of sinking into that world and experiencing that alien theme, rather than the combat or story or anything like that, then you'll have a really good time and find that on all fronts, Alien Dark Descent delivers. Alien Dark Descent is centered around Deputy Administrator Hayes, a sort of hard-ass, no-nonsense type as she helps to run the Pioneer space station orbiting the planet Lethe. Upon receiving the last bit of cargo from Lethe, Hayes realizes something feels off as they lose contact with the people in the cargo bay. Lo and behold, an alien joins the party, murdering the entirety of the Pioneer. Hayes, following protocol, initiates a quarantine containment measure that results in her ship and any other ship trying to board getting blown to smithereens as a way of containing the alien threat. One ship does make it through, the Otago, where Hayes gets rescued by the Colonial Marines and taken to Lethe's planet's surface to safety, where they discover the full extent of the alien outbreak and must fight to both survive, but uncover the truth behind the outbreak and contain it to the planet. I want to talk a little bit more about the story later, but first I want to cover the gameplay of this game, as I think that's where this game really stands out. As I said before, Dark Descent is a real-time, tactical, squad-based action strategy game. It presents similar to something like XCOM, with both the base management side of things and that mission-based gameplay, but with the foundations of something like Door Kickers, where the game is always moving. When on mission, you control a squad of 4 Marines. Although holding individual abilities depending on how you spec them, functionally they move as a unit, so you click a spot and all of them will follow. Each mission has you performing various objectives, like looking for survivors, to collecting loot, which comes in the form of medkits, tech parts, ammo, materials, to uncovering data pads and information revealing truths about the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, or information regarding whatever's happened to this planet. Along the way, you'll encounter enemies, either in the form of aliens or cultists, and combat revolves both around maneuvering your squad into better positions, like cover, choke points, etc., and using your squad skills. Now, combat is interesting, mainly because I've never played a type of game like this before. Although you control your squad, they will fire automatically at will when engaging an enemy, and whilst doing so, you can still control how they move, allowing you to move them out of the way of enemy attacks, or to retreat whilst using covering fire or whatever. Now that's pretty simple, but hitting space brings up your action menu, giving you access to all the skills that you've unlocked either via the weapons that you kit your squad out with, or the skills that you've upgraded your squad members with. These skills include things like shotgun blasts that do high damage at close range, to grenade launchers, flamethrowers, precision shots, as well as forms of equipment like trip mines and sentry guns, with most of these, save the sentry gun, being linked to command points, which is essentially skill points that recharge over time, and during combat you can cash in to use these skills. It's playing around these skills which is the key to this combat, as you can use flamethrowers to cut off certain tunnels or choke points, to playing around sentry guns as they provide much needed support, particularly when getting swarmed by aliens, or to even stealth elements, as when you're exploring and not in active combat you need to sneak past enemies, their position being graciously alerted to you via the radar in the bottom of the screen. Later on you get a suppressed sniper ability that lets you kill enemies in stealth, which makes exploring much easier, but there's still a risk of getting spotted and engaged upon, particularly with the scaling difficulty system, as the more you alert enemies to your presence, the greater the world difficulty increases. It's less linked to time like the likes of Risk of Rain, and more linked to time being detected, with the increase in difficulty meaning increased number of enemies, as well as spawning a massive onslaught at certain difficulty checkpoints where a whole horde of aliens will rush your position, or a Generation 2 Xeno will spawn, meaning you need to prepare accordingly else your squad will get ripped apart. The second part of the gameplay is the base management. Extracting with your squad returns you to the Otago, where you can upgrade your squad members' gears and skills, recruit more squad members, research equipment like better guns, as well as Xeno technology that active sort of passive abilities that you can choose to equip at the start of a mission, with things like allowing you to remove facehuggers safely, to reducing acid blood damage that damages squad members when Xenos die too close, to reducing Xeno detection time, small things that help out in the long run. The most important feature would be the medbay, where you heal up squad members after a mission. This healing comes in 2 forms. 1, healing physical damage that your squad receives when out on mission, to trauma or psychological damage that gets inflicted upon your party. You see, in addition to the increasing difficulty during a run, your squad is also exposed to stress, similar to the likes of Darkest Dungeon. Once you reach 100% stress, your squad member will receive trauma in the form of a semi-permanent defect. These defects being things like the squad member consumes more ammo, to reducing overall command points. Although one might not have much of an impact on the squad, multiple squad members with trauma can have a significant impact, drastically reducing the amount you can use your skills. It's another element that needs to be juggled along with the increasing difficulty, and creates this decision as to whether you continue on a mission with the risk of subjecting your squad to too much stress, or pull them out halfway and return to the ship to recover before heading out again. Difficulty also increases with how much time passes whilst you're in your base of operations, as there's this overall planetary difficulty that increases after a certain number of days pass. There's not much more to it than that, and adds another element to think about, as you can't just keep extracting mid-mission to heal your squad up, posing the question, do I keep this squad out longer to prevent the difficulty increase, or while struggling the separate difficulty that's increasing during the mission? It's not too punishing, to be honest. I played on the hard difficulty, and I think in every mission I returned to the base at least once to restock and heal, and overall I found that the difficulty scaled nicely with my squad upgrades, which felt palpable for the most part. In regards to upgrades, at level 3 each squad member will be able to be assigned a class, from Gunner that uses a big smart gun, to sniper that grants you precision skill shot, to tech that gets you a little tech drone, and sergeant that increases your overall command points. Each class has 3 unique skills, some of which are much better than others. Like the silent sniper shot I mentioned before is just OP, to being able to place the gunner's smart gun to access a bonus sentry, as well as generic ones that are spread across all classes like increasing bravery, accuracy, ammo, etc. I think it does a decent enough job of creating some class variety, but to be honest, some of the upgrades and classes felt pretty useless. Tech in particular allows you to hack terminals, but then other classes have the option to do that with one of the generic upgrades. And they also have this drone I mentioned, which I feel like I didn't see do a single thing. Gunner, Commander, and Sniper were the main classes worth speccing into, and I'll circle back to that a bit later. And to its credit, this game is surprisingly long. It took me maybe like 16 to 20 hours to finish, and not at all did moving through these world spaces feel repetitive thanks to the great map and art design. This game really builds atmosphere and really immerses you into these settings and into this struggle. And as a fan of Aliens, it's exactly what I wanted. I think overall the gameplay was done well. It was fun moving through each mission, exploring different areas of the ship, and paired with what I said about this game's atmosphere and tone, I think it all works really well together, and definitely feels like an Aliens game, and feels natural to have it as a real-time strategy action game. It immerses you into it. It's stressful at times, especially sneaking through loads of enemies or triggering a horde and having enemies bearing down on you. And seeing those dots swarm at you on the radar is both stressful and exhilarating, and getting through some of the combat scenarios was genuinely relieving. There were multiple situations where a group of aliens just suddenly swarm into the room, and I hit space and I see them all slowly charging my group, and I'm just like, oh fuck. That was the best part of this game, as you have to juggle each member, take note of your abilities and what's on offer. It is real-time strategy. The mission design for the most part was pretty average, typical stuff like collect this, check that, but despite that, it's still all grounded in this alien universe and that alien aesthetic that doesn't feel monotonous. The game is dripping with that alien charm, and just being in these missions felt great, irrespective of whatever flaws there were. And occasionally there are set-piece moments that get sprinkled in that really bring this game to life. I mean, overall the map design I felt was great. Each map distinct from one another, from dark, twisting corridors on dead spaceships to deserted, muddy mountain passes. That city map I thought towards the end of the game was a great change of pace, and I loved that neon aesthetic. I think my favorite mission was the one where you had to navigate through these electrical generators, which would go off periodically, killing you or any alien caught in the blast radius. Juggling that with the aliens swarming you was great, as there was this new timing element introduced, but these set piece moments I feel kind of stand out from the rest of the game and makes you see how the rest of the game is kind of lacking. You see, although I think the combat and the base game of Dark Descent was good, towards the end of the game it left me wishing there was a little bit more to it. For starters, there were only really 4 types of enemies in this game. You had the Xeno, and then the level 2 Xeno, which is just a bigger version, facehuggers that don't really pose much of a threat, and cultists, which added some ranged enemies which I liked, but ultimately wasn't as engaging, as you kind of just stand there behind cover waiting for one team to outshoot the other. I think the base management, although a nice addition and done alright, ultimately became pretty repetitive and kind of obsolete, especially with squad member upgrades, as after getting those class specific upgrades, you're left with the more generic ones that only really add a small amount of value. There also aren't a whole lot of weapons on offer, so eventually the base management side of things kind of just turns into waiting for your squad members to heal before going on another mission kind of thing. I'm not sure what else they could add to flesh this out. I guess more equipment and weapons, maybe something like elemental upgrades or something. It just needed something else towards the end of the game to keep it going. I wish there was more environmental interaction in each mission. Like, they have these fire barrels that you can shoot, and those generators I mentioned before, which were great, albeit rare. I think being able to shoot like air vents to stun aliens could be cool, or maybe even like trapdoors you could set up or set off. It's just the environment, although atmospheric, did feel a little static, but I understand that that isn't the main focus of the game, and you can say that any game needs more environmental interaction. And I think the reason I'm being so critical of it is that I actually really enjoy the exploration and the combat system. I liked controlling my dudes through these tight dark corridors. I liked setting up defenses as aliens swarmed in. I liked stealthing around, picking off rogue aliens. And so I was just a bit disheartened towards the end when the game started to slow down, becoming more about the story and less about the gameplay, and I think that final mission and that final boss fight was definitely the weakest part of the game and left the game with this kind of limp dick finish. The story was definitely one of the weaker elements here. To begin with, the pacing, especially at the start of the game, was just jarring to say the least. Like the first time you meet the main character, Hayes, it's her defying orders and bitching about protocol, and essentially gets told to fuck off. And then she disobeys orders and goes to check the cargo bay via the cameras and sees people are just getting murdered in the cargo bay. She then decides to go check it out for herself before alerting the captain that there's dead people in the cargo bay for whatever reason. Finds a dude dying at the front door that says, "Don't go in there," and she's like, "I need to see this for for myself. And then she sees all the dead people and she's like, oh shit, there's an alien. And then she goes and tells the captain of the ship. And then she gives the order to bomb the ship for the good of the people to contain the threat before getting picked up by the Marines. I mean, what kind of way to intro a character is that? It just shows like all these negative things that she does, defying orders, making stupid decisions. All that happened in like the first 20 minutes. There was no character establishment or introduction. I don't know why we're at this planet. It was like getting cognitive whiplash. Thankfully after that, the pacing gets a lot better, until the end where it kind of grinds on for a bit. The rest of the story revolves around uncovering the planet's alien secret, dealing with the cultist group that want to pair with the aliens, which, side note, I don't think cultists have been in the franchise up until this point, but I think it's pretty fitting. I just think that the whole cultist thing is a bit cliche, which goes along with a lot of other cliches in this game, like how the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is evil and wants to save the aliens, to synths being evil, to like the boss that you're following orders from turning out to have ill intentions. It was all going to happen, we all saw it, we all knew it, so I was kind of just waiting for these story beats to reveal. I wish that this game's story was a bit braver or a bit more bold. Like there was a moment in the story where someone was questioning whether they were a synth or not, which kind of came out of the blue, but was also something that I think could have been cool to explore more. And then there was this whole weird subplot slash turned out to be main plot storyline, and spoilers by the way, where the leader of the Colonial Marines can like sense aliens, and his daughter was kidnapped and experimented on, and they were using her as a bridge between aliens and humans, which felt pretty magical in the context of the universe. And then the game ends with this boss fight where essentially you and this dude's daughter are running away from like the main mega alien, and it's about to kill you, and the guy, the Colonial Marine guy, from the ship controls the alien with his mind, allowing you to escape before dying from it. Personally, that doesn't sound very alien-like, and was just pretty ridiculous to watch unfold. I don't know. The story felt predictable up until the point where it became a bit absurd, but within all that, it still definitely felt like an alien story, which I appreciate. And I mean, it's not like XCOM story is that riveting either. And so for the most part, it was enjoyable. And I'm glad that it didn't have any of the engineers or anything like that in it. And besides, the gameplay and the atmosphere was the main point of the game, not the story. Some of the writing and voice acting was also a bit off. And although some of the cinematics looked great, with some actually really cool art design and cinematography, especially at the start of the game, other parts looked a bit budgeted and crooked, especially some of the character models.
Who's aboard the Bensonville?
What are you talking about?
The dock crew in Cargo Bay 4 are dead.
Dead? That's not funny.
Look! Look! What the fuck is this?
So yeah, the story's a bit predictable, the pacing kind of slows down towards the end regarding story and gameplay, but despite all that, I still had a really good time playing Aliens Dark Descent. Moving through these spaces that have been built, exploring and reliving this alien universe all feels so good that I'd say it's the best thing about this game, that experience, the worlds it's built, the atmosphere, and say what you will about the writing, it felt fitting to this universe, and like a story that revolved around Marines. It felt similar to Aliens, which is great and fitting, and goes a long way to immersing you in this world and in the story. And that's the thing, this game is immersive, it keeps you alert and on edge, and I think it's a style of game that's really fitting to this Aliens franchise. And so overall, if you're looking for an in-depth tactics-based gameplay system and nothing else, I think you'll be left a little bit wanting with Aliens Dark Descent, but if you're a fan of Alien and the source material, and you want to just relive an Alien story and experience more of this universe, I think you'll definitely come to enjoy this game, and would be more than worth checking out. Pick it up when it's on sale, I doubt you'll be disappointed. Thanks again for watching, team. Ciao, ciao.